and how a protein structure is stabilized by non-covalent interactions, yeah? And how protein function depends on its structure. Yeah, you saw this before. Yeah, that protein function depends on its structure. Even just now, I explained to you a lot about how we use the structure to design vaccine. Yeah, that the function of vaccine really depends on its structure. Yeah? So knowing protein structure is very important. Yeah? Right. So unlike most organic polymers, protein molecules adopt a specific three-dimensional conformation. Ya, so berbeza dengan other organic polymers, proteins have specific three-dimensional conformation. Yeah. So this is a new term that you need to know. Yeah, conformation is a spatial arrangement of atoms in a protein. Yeah. So so basically, it's a three-dimensional arrangement of atoms in a protein. Yeah? And this structure is able to fulfill a specific biological function. Yeah? So in order for the protein to function, they need to have certain structure. You lose the structure, you lose the function. Yeah? For example, the spike protein that I showed you before. The same protein, yeah, but the function is totally different between pre-fusion and post-fusion conformation. The function is totally different, ya. The same protein, sama, sequence-nya sama, dia punya structure sama, just satu dia tertutup, satu lagi terbuka. Ya. Yang pertama dia pre-fusion, dia tertutup macam ni, yang kedua dia terbuka, post-fusion. Itu je beza dia. Ya. But the function is totally different. It's totally different. The vaccine, in order for the vaccine to work specifically to spike protein, then the vaccine has to be in pre-fusion. Yeah. Scientists designed a vaccine, yeah, many years ago in 1960s. Yeah, in 1960s, they designed a vaccine for RSV. Yeah. Respiratory syncytial virus is a respiratory disease. Yeah, it happens to kids. Yeah, due to the virus named RSV. Yeah, so the scientists they made a vaccine for RSV. Yeah. And then when the vaccine is given to kids, something very shocking happens. Instead of protecting the kids, the vaccine makes the kid to be easily infected by the virus. 80%, 80% of kids who are vaccinated, they got sick because of the virus. 80%, almost all of them. Yeah, so they stop the vaccine. Yeah? So luckily it happens during the clinical trial. So with small population of kids, so they can stop the vaccine as immediately. And now they realize the vaccine that they designed, yeah, 60 years ago, dah lama. So the vaccine that they designed actually is in post-fusion conformation. Dia bukan pre-fusion macam yang Moderna and Pfizer buat. The vaccine that they designed, the vaccine that they made, is in post-fusion conformation. So instead of blocking the virus, it helps the virus to infect the kids. Yeah. So that's why knowing the structure is very important. You don't know the structure, you just make the vaccine out of the blue, then you will see like what happened with RSV vaccine. You know, instead of protecting the kids, it's helping the virus to infect the kids. So knowing the structure is very important. Well, 60 years ago, there is no knowledge about this. Yeah. Tak ada lagi semua orang tahu pasal post-fusion, pre-fusion. Even protein data bank tak ada lagi 60 years ago. Yeah. Protein data bank, yeah, the database that I show you, that website, tak ada lagi dulu. So that's why during that time, you know, scientists did that mistake. Well, it's not a mistake. It's the best information that they had during that time. Yeah, but now we know what happened. The vaccine that they made is for post-fusion conformation. So it helps the virus to infect the kids. All right, so the structure, yeah, that fulfill a specific biological function is called the native fold. Yeah? So dia punya structure itu yang dia ada function, kita panggil dia as a native, yeah? As a native fold. Yeah? So the native fold is a large number of favorable interaction within the protein. So the protein is is stabilized by a number of interaction, which I will show you in the next slide. Yeah. So there is a cause in conformational entropy of folding the protein into one specific native fold. I will discuss this during thermodynamics. Yeah. So in one chapter, yeah, specific chapter of protein thermodynamics. So we will discuss about entropy. Yeah. So these are some interaction that stabilize the protein. Yeah. So if you have protein, yeah, this is a protein, and this protein has to maintain its structure. So the way this protein maintain its structure is by utilizing all these interactions. Yeah. So ada hydrophobic effect. So hydrophobic effect is used for the protein to maintain the integrity of the internal structure of the protein, bagian dalam nih, ya. So it buries the hydrophobic groups inside the protein molecule. So dekat dalam nih is there are hydrophobic amino acid like phenylalanine, tryptophan, you know, inside the protein. Sebab apa? Sebab dekat luar nih air, ya. Dekat luar nih air. So the protein, in order for the protein to stabilize the structure, so the protein has to bury the hydrophobic amino acid in the internal structure of the protein. Yeah. And then yang dua ini is hydroxide, yeah, in the external part of the protein. Okay. If the hydrophobic amino acids are outside, then the protein becomes unstable because of water, ya. So dia masa protein to fold, dia letak semua hydrophobic amino acid dekat dalam. Yang dekat luar is hydrophilic, ya. So it's very smart way to stabilize the protein. And then hydrogen bonds, ya. Hydrogen bonds stabilize the alpha and helix, alpha and beta, ya. You saw this last week, ya. But we'll go into detail today. Ya. And then London dispersion, yeah. You are a chemistry student, you know what London dispersion is. Is interaction between induced dipoles, yeah, induced dipoles. So this is a non-covalent interaction, yeah. And then electrostatic interaction between charged amino acid, yeah, between amino acid that have charge. For example, lysine, yeah, lysine has positive charge, and aspartic acid has negative charge. So diorang ada interaction, and that interaction will stabilize the structure of the protein. So these are interactions that stabilize the protein structure. This is one example of the protein. Yeah, it's an enzyme called chymotrypsin. Chymotrypsin is a small enzyme. It's very small. Yeah, and if you want to compare the size of this enzyme, then you can compare it with the size of glycine. Glycine is very small, yeah. So you can compare the size of chymotrypsin with glycine. Yeah. So chymotrypsin is one of the smallest protein, yeah. So so it's pretty small, yeah? But you can see the three-dimensional, yeah. The three-dimensional. So ada lubang, ya, ada gunung dia. So it's very if you have 3D printer, you can print the structure and you can put it in your study room, you know, to see, oh, this is the spike protein, you know. You can print the spike protein using 3D printer. You can put it in your study room to motivate yourself that one day you will cure disease. Yeah, you will become a good chemist. You make a drug that can cure, for example, cancer, you know, or cure, you know, COVID one day, you know. So yeah, sometimes you need motivation. So if you have 3D printer, yeah, And there are 4 levels of protein structure. Yeah, you saw this last week in my first lecture. So the primary structure is the sequence of the protein, yeah, the amino acid sequence out of the ribosome. Then the protein is folded into secondary structure, alpha and beta. And then the whole protein will fold further into a polypeptide chain. It's called tertiary structure. And if your protein, in order for your protein to function, if it has to involve more than one subunit, then it will form a quaternary structure. Yeah, so it's assemble a subunit. Yeah. So it's very surprising actually that the protein actually is stabilized by weak interaction. Yeah, the protein is stabilized by weak interaction. Yeah, you will be amazed that a lot of things around us actually is stabilized by weak interaction. For example, our joints. Yeah, you all pagi-pagi stretch kan, stretch your body, you know, bersukan sikit, you know. You see our joints, you know, what we have in our joints is very weak bones. Yeah, it's very weak bones that connect up between our bones, yeah, in our joint, but somehow our joint is very important. Yeah, even though that's the weakest point in our body. Yeah, our joint is the weakest point. Yeah, but somehow, you know, it stabilizes us. You know, it's very important to us. You cannot move your joint, habis lah. Selalunya macam saya lah yang dah tua-tua ni kan, start having joint pain, you know, sakit-sakit sana, sakit sini, you know, it's very difficult to move our joint, then we suffer lah. But if you are still young, it's very easy for you to move your joint. So a lot of things in our life are stabilized by weak interactions. Yeah? The one that hold the integrity of something actually is a weak interaction, as you can see here. Yeah? So these are the interactions that stabilize the protein. All these are non-covalent bond. Non-covalent bond, hydrophobic interaction, hydrogen bond, London dispersion. London dispersion is very weak interaction. Yeah? Medium range weak interaction. Electrostatic interaction, also non-bonded interaction, non-covalent interaction. But somehow all this weak interaction, yeah, weak interaction stabilizes the protein. It's amazing how life teaches us that we cannot underestimate those who are weak. Yeah, the protein is stabilized by weak interactions. You are rich because of poor people. You cannot get rich if there are no poor people who work in the plantation, who work, you know, sweeping the road, you know, collecting our garbage. Taklah you all apa orang-orang kaya nak kutip sampah sendiri, buang sampah sendiri kan, nak sapu jalan, nak kerja kilang. You are rich because of poor people. If there are no poor people, there will be no rich people. Right? So this is how science teaches us. Yeah, we cannot underestimate weak things. We cannot underestimate something that we think, well, this is weak things. Well, this is worse than this. You know, you are pretty because of there are ugly people. If everybody is pretty, so there is no pretty people, right? You are pretty because you compare yourself with someone else who are less pretty, right? So that's how life, you know, that's how life is. Yeah, something that it seems very strong actually exists, or actually it's stabilized by something that is weak. Yeah, so you see all this interaction, they are weak interaction, they are non-bonded interaction, non-covalent interaction, but somehow it supports the protein structure, the integrity of the protein. Yeah. All right, so go back to this slide. Weak interaction stabilize conformation. Yeah. So so in terms of the stability, yeah. So the protein has a tendency to keep native conformation, yeah, by releasing the water molecules from the structure solvation layer around the molecule as protein folds, yeah, to increase the net entropy. So if you have protein, yeah, and then the protein folds into something, into a native structure, then it will release the water molecule. Sebab apa? Sebab as I explained to you before, the internal structure is hydrophobic. So the protein will remove water molecule from the internal structure, right, to keep the native conformation. Yeah. Weak interaction are responsible for native structure. You always remember what I told you. You know, in life, we cannot underestimate those who are weak, because we are here because of them. Yeah, we are here because of them. So and it happens with the protein that weak interaction are responsible, you know, for native structure, right? And protein conformation with the lowest free energy, the most stable one, is the one with maximum number of weak interaction. Yeah, those with maximum number of weak interaction is the most stable protein conformation. Okay. So as I mentioned before in the previous slide, yeah, when the protein is released from ribosome and the protein is folded into its native structure, then the water molecule will be expelled, yeah, from the internal structure of the protein. So you have water molecule here, yeah, surrounds the protein, yeah. So we call this as a solvation layer of water molecule, right? So it solvates the protein, yeah. It stabilizes the protein from outside. But inside the protein is stabilized by hydrophobic interaction. So there are rules that hydrophobic residues are buried inside the protein, and the number of hydrogen bond within a protein is maximized. Yeah? So if you have a lot of hydrophobic interaction, at the same time, the hydrogen bond will be created, yeah, will be formed inside the protein. It's a nice arrangement, yeah. How hydrophobic interaction and water, they work together to stabilize the protein. Even though they cannot mix, yeah, water cannot mix with hydrophobic amino acid, yeah, but somehow they work together to stabilize the protein, yeah. So it's very nice arrangement. All right, so now let's discuss about the covalent bond, yeah. So we discussed about non-covalent bond before. Now let's go into covalent bond and see how this covalent bond dictate the protein structure. All right, so the structure of protein is partially determined by the properties of the peptide bond. In my first lecture, you saw Ramachandran plot, yeah, the phi and psi angle. The phi and psi angle dictate the alpha and beta structure. Right, still remember, right? Kalau dah lupa kan tengok balik. So phi and psi angle happens to the backbone of the peptide chain, ya. Tapi around the peptide bond dia tak ada angle because it cannot be twisted. Because what? Because it's a resonance hybrid of two canonical structure. Yeah. If you look at the structure of the peptide bond, yeah, I try to draw here. Yeah. So this is the peptide bond. Okay. All right. Right. Okay. Yeah. So if you look at this bond, yeah, it's very difficult to twist because of the resonance from the CO. Yeah, it has double bond here, right? And not double bond, the two pairs of electron, and then this has a electronic pair as well. Yeah? So the peptide bond is very difficult to twist because of the resonance, yeah, from the CO double bond, yeah. So because of that, then the phi and psi angle does not happen in the peptide bond. So peptide bond is very rigid, yeah. So as mentioned here, the electron sharing causes the peptide bond to be less reactive compared to ester, for example, yeah? And it's shorter than CN bond. Yeah? So it's shorter than this bond, all right, CN bond, yeah. So it's shorter basically. It's quite rigid, yeah, because it cannot be twisted, yeah. You cannot twist the bond. Only phi and psi angle happens in other bonds, but not in the peptide bond. And it exhibits large dipole moment in the trans configuration. So the configuration adopted by the peptide bonds is trans, yeah? Between O, C, O, and H. There is hydrogen here. So it's in trans configuration, okay? It's more stable. Yeah, so this is the resonance that happened in the peptide bond, yeah? Sorry, there is a mistake here. Ini tak ada O. Is directly connected to N. All right. Yeah. Okay. So this is the peptide bond. Yeah. And because of the resonance, you will have 1.5 bond order here. Yeah. 1.5 bond. Right. So that's why it cannot. It's very difficult to twist. Yeah. It's a very rigid bond. It's a very strong bond. Yeah? So rotation around the peptide bond is not permitted, yeah, because of the resonance effect. Yeah. Rotation around bonds connected to the alpha carbon is permitted, yeah. So it's called phi and psi angle, yeah. So you saw this before, yeah. Phi angle is around the alpha carbon, yeah. It's an amide nitrogen bond, and psi angle is angle around the alpha carbon. It's a carbonyl carbon bond, yeah. So it's a fully extended polypeptide. Both psi and phi angle are 180 degree, yeah, which is in a protein structure that doesn't have secondary structure. Yeah. Kalau you extend, yeah, you tarik semua, yeah, dia phi and psi angle are 180 degree. Yeah. We call this situation as denatured structure. Yeah. Denatured. Kalau you panaskan protein tu, yeah, rosak structure here, it becomes extended. Yeah, we call this as denatured protein. Yeah, as you can see here, all this angle that you can twist. Yeah, this peptide bond cannot be twisted. Yeah, mana yang peptide bond? Yeah? This one is peptide bond. Yeah, cannot be twisted. Yeah. So but the rest can be twisted. Yeah, phi and psi angle can be twisted. Yeah? You saw this in my previous lecture before. Phi and psi angle, even though it can be twisted, but it has to follow certain rules. Yeah, it cannot just twist here and there, you know, freely. So it has to follow certain rules so that the protein will have certain structure. Yeah, and the rules that they have to follow is based on Ramachandran plot. Yeah, Ramachandran plot that you saw in my previous slides before. Yeah? So it will dictate how many degree phi and psi angle can twist. Yeah, so it can twist between certain degrees. Yeah, so that the protein structure can be maintained. If the phi and psi angle twists, yeah, outside those ranges, then the protein will lose the structure. Yeah. So the secondary structure depends on the local arrangement of the polypeptide backbone. Yeah, so it's alpha and beta. Yeah, alpha and beta. And then there are irregular arrangement. We call it as random coil in terms of turns and loops. Yeah. So alpha, beta, turns, and loop. Yeah? So you need to remember all those secondary structures. Yeah? All right. So this is alpha helix. Yeah. So this is the simplest arrangement of a polypeptide can assume. Yeah. So quarter of all amino acid residues in polypeptide are found in alpha helices. Yeah. Keratin, your hair is it has alpha structure. Yeah. And it's stabilized by hydrogen bond. Yeah, between N and N+4 amino acid. So there is hydrogen bond between amino acid number 2 and number 6, between amino acid number 3 and number 7, between amino acid number 4 and number 8, and etc. Yeah. The length of helix is with is 3.6 residues per turn. Yeah. So this is how left-handed and right-handed helix. Yeah, there are two types of helix, yeah? Right-handed and left-handed. Yeah, so you can use your hand to understand better. Yeah. So let's see how alpha helix looks like. Yeah. So when we view the alpha helix from the top, yeah, this is the alpha helix. Ya. Kalau kita tengok dari atas, ini mata kita tengok dari atas. Ya. So the diameter is between 4 to 5 angstrom. Ya, between 4 to 5 angstrom dia punya diameter. Ya. Is too small for anything to fit inside. So tak ada benda yang boleh masuk lah. Ya, tak ada benda yang boleh masuk. Ya. The outer diameter of the helix is 10 to 12 angstrom lah. Ya. So this is how it looks like. Kalau kita nampak dari atas. Ya. Ini yang bagian dalamnya. The internal diameter is 4 to 5 angstrom. Ya, 4 to 5 angstrom. The outside diameter is 10 to 12 angstrom. 10 to 12 angstrom. Right. If you look at from this is the side view of the alpha helix, it looks like this. Yeah. So it's a nice arrangement. Yeah. So this is one of my previous research projects. I work on the antifreeze peptide, yeah, the peptide that we isolate from Antarctica, and we are able to solve the structure. Even we are able to synthesize it. The structure is like this, exactly like this. Yeah. So it's alpha helix peptide. Yeah, the length is between 36 to 40 amino acids. Yeah, and yeah, the shape is like this. So it works by stopping the water from freezing. Yeah, so we keep the water in liquid form, even though it's in low temperature. So that's why ikan, you know, all those trees, you know, all those organisms in Arctic and Antarctica, they don't get frozen. They survive in low temperature because in their blood, in their cells, they have antifreeze molecule, which is this. Yeah? We call it as antifreeze protein. And the shape of one of antifreeze proteins that we isolated is alpha helix. Yeah, so I published a paper in 2012 about this antifreeze protein. Yeah. So the sequence affects helix stability. Yeah. So I remember, many years ago when we work on antifreeze peptide, because we need to synthesize the peptide, right? We need to synthesize. Yeah, we know the structure from the yeast that we isolated from Antarctica. Nama yeast dia is Glaciozyma antarctica. Yeah. So and then we are able to get the antifreeze protein, yeah, the protein that helps the yeast to survive in low temperature. Just like how Moderna designed a vaccine, yeah. We know the structure, and then we synthesize the peptide based on that structure. And we need to stabilize the peptide so that it will maintain the helix structure, just like the structure that we saw in the protein that belongs to that yeast, yeah, to the Glaciozyma antarctica. We have to be very careful with the sequence. Yeah, we have to put the amino acid that can stabilize the helix structure. Yeah. So the amino acids that can stabilize, that normally stabilize the helix structure is alanine and leucine. So if you have plenty of alanine and leucine in the structure, you can stabilize the helix. Yeah, you can maintain the helix stability. Yeah. If you have proline, however, it will break the helix structure. Yeah, because the rotation around the N and C alpha bond is impossible. Yeah. So proline is a helix breaker. Yeah, so we avoid the presence of proline when we design the peptide, yeah? Because we don't want to break the helix structure. Yeah? Other than proline, glycine, yeah? Glycine also acts as helix breaker. It breaks the helix structure, so we avoid having glycine in our peptide, yeah? So that we can maintain the stability of the helix. So proline and glycine are the two amino acids that we have to avoid from the sequence of the protein if we want to design a helix protein. Yeah. Yeah, so these are some other constraints, yeah, that we need to consider, yeah, when we want to stabilize the helix. Yeah, proline and glycine you need to avoid. Yeah, how the interaction between R groups 3 or 4 residues apart, because as you know, the helix structure is stabilized by the electrostatic interaction between N and N plus 4. Okay? So you need to make sure that the interaction between the side chain group 3 or 4 residues apart are optimized for the helix to be stable. Yeah? So the way our team stabilize the protein, yeah. So last time we synthesized this protein, yeah, helix structure, yeah, 36 to 40 amino acid long. Yeah. We stabilize the helix structure by adding a new amino acid. Yeah? So we add K, which is lysine, and R, which is aspartic acid. Yeah, and the distance between them is 4 amino acid. The distance between them, K is positive, R is negative. It will create the hydrogen. It will create a electrostatic interaction. That's how our team stabilized this this protein. Yeah, by adding K and R. It was not there before, but we are chemists, right? Of course, we can think. As chemists, we can think, well, how to stabilize this? Okay, so let's just add the electrostatic interaction by adding a lysine and aspartic acid. Sorry, arginine, yeah, not aspartic acid, arginine. Yeah. Aspartic acid is D, sorry. Aspartic acid is D, yeah. So it has negative charge. So between K and D, there is an electrostatic interaction that stabilizes the helix structure. Yeah. Yeah, so this is the details about the constraints, yeah, to helix stability. Yeah. First is electrostatic repulsion or attraction between a charged amino acid. Yeah. So interaction between amino acid side chain. Yeah. You remember amino acid side chain, right? So this is amino acid, NH, C, R, C, O, OH. This is amino acid, right? So this is the side chain. Yeah. So the side chain is the thing that makes amino acid different between one amino acid and the other. Yeah. So the interaction between amino acid side chain can stabilize or destabilize a helix. Yeah. For example, kalau you ada glutamic acid. Yeah. Glutamic acid is acidic amino acid. Yeah. So it has negative charge. Kalau you ada glutamic acid, ya, glutamic. So it will not create helix structure at pH 7 because of negative charge repulsion. Yeah. So the same thing with positively charged amino acid. So you need to avoid, yeah, a long block of charged amino acid. It will not create an alpha helix structure at pH 7. Sebab ada charge repulsion. Yeah. Bulkiness of R groups. Yeah. Kalau you ada peptide, yeah, alpha helix, and then amino acid number N, and amino acid number N+1, so next to each other. Ya. Kalau dia bulky sangat, dia punya side chain bulky sangat, dia gemuk macam ni, ya, it will destabilize the helix. Sebab apa? Sebab apa? Dia panggil this interaction is they become crowded. Yeah, they become crowded due to steric hindrance. So you need to avoid having bulky amino acid next to each other. Tak boleh. Ya, sebab dia bulky, ya, bulky sangat. So due to steric hindrance, it will break the helix structure. Interaction between R groups 3 or 4 residues apart. Ini saya dah jelaskan tadi, ya. It's very critical interaction. Ya. So this is what I did. Yeah. Long time ago, I stabilized the helix structure by forming ion pairs between two charged residues. One is positive, one is negative. So they form electrostatic interaction. So it stabilizes the helix structure. Or if you don't want to add extra charge, you can put hydrophobic amino acid, 3 or 4 amino acid apart. It will interact each other using hydrophobic interaction. It also can stabilize the helix structure. Boleh, ya. Macam if you have this peptide, ya, helix peptide, you not stabilize this helix peptide by putting phenylalanine, for example. Yeah, this is phenylalanine, kan? And then another phenylalanine here, OH. Yeah. So, but you must put 3 or 4 amino acid apart so that they can interact. Don't put them next to each other. Sebab ini bulky, ya. Ini bulky, ya. So it will create steric hindrance, but put them 3 or 4 amino acid apart so they can have a nice hydrophobic interaction. Proline and glycine, I already explained to you, yeah. Try to avoid them. Yeah. Because proline will break the helix structure as well as glycine. It will break the helix structure. Yeah? And in nature, it's rarely found in alpha helix. Yeah. And also glycine also is very rare in alpha helix. Yeah? So in nature, it doesn't happen. It's very rare. Yeah? It almost it doesn't exist. Yeah, because it will break the alpha helix. So the dipole, yeah, another constraint to helix stability. Yeah. So between C and between carbonyl and amide, yeah, the amide is it has a positive dipole, and the carbonyl has negative dipole. It can stabilize the helix as well. Yeah, it can stabilize the helix by hydrogen bond. Yeah, so remember that alpha helix is stabilized by hydrogen bond between N and N+4, right? So it's due to a hydrogen bond. Yeah? All right, so this is the alpha helix. Yeah, so it's stabilized by a lot of weak interaction, by charge interaction, by hydrogen bond, as well as by hydrogen bond. Any question?
No.
Tak ada, eh? Okay. Now let's continue with the beta sheet. Yeah. Beta sheet is totally different. Yeah. Dia flat sahaja. Yeah. Dia flat. Yeah. So kalau alpha helix dia macam ni kan, dia spiral. Kalau beta dia flat. Yeah. And just like helix structure, beta structure is stabilized by hydrogen bond as well. Yeah. So basically, weak interaction play a very important role in keeping the structure of the protein. Yeah. So backbone is extended into a zigzag. Yeah, zigzag. Yeah. So hydrogen bond form between adjacent segments. Yeah. So there is a size limit. Yeah, just like alpha helix, that the R group next to each other must be small. Otherwise, it will create a steric hindrance. However, there is a difference. Yeah, if you have, this is the first amino acid, second amino acid, third amino acid, fourth amino acid. Yeah? So the R group, it has to be in opposite direction. Yeah. So this is R1, this is R2. Yeah. So to reduce the steric hindrance. Yeah. So one, it has to be small. Another one, it has to be in the opposite direction to reduce the steric hindrance. Yeah. There are two types of beta sheets. Yeah. It's a parallel and anti-parallel. Yeah. I had this in my introduction slide as well. Yeah. This is anti-parallel beta sheet from the top. Yeah. This is the top view. You can see how they interact nicely between the first layer with the second layer. The first layer go to different direction than the second layer, right? So this is the third beta sheet, yeah, the third layer. So they interact through hydrogen bond. Yeah. Right. So this is anti-parallel, yeah, and this is parallel. Yeah, you can see that they go to the same direction. Yeah, they go to the same direction between layers. So the easiest way to see the difference between anti-parallel and parallel is by looking at how they go. Anti-parallel goes to different direction between sheets, yeah, between layers. But for parallel, they go to the same direction. Yeah, and hydrogen bond is maintaining the structure of parallel base sheet as well as anti-parallel base beta sheet. Yeah. All right, and then this is turn. Yeah, turn. So there are different type of turn: beta, gamma, delta, alpha. Yeah. So this is a beta turn. Yeah. So beta turns occur frequently when beta sheet change the direction. So you ada beta, dia pergi sana, dia nak tukar, ya, pergi sini. Yeah, it happens in anti-parallel. So they are connected through turns. Yeah, so ada turn structure yang dia connect. Yeah, the turn structure that connects between two beta structure when they change direction. Yeah. So it consists of 4 amino acids. Yeah. Yeah. So this 4 amino acid creates a 180-degree turn. So that's why you nampak kat sini. For anti-parallel, it can turn 180 degree. Dia pergi sana, terus patah balik. Yeah. So how it can patah balik? Because of the turn structure. Yeah. Because of the presence of turn. Consists of 4 amino acids that helps the beta sheet to turn. Yeah. The turn structure is stabilized by hydrogen bond, yeah, between amino acid number 1 and amino acid number 4. Yeah. So between N and N+3. Yeah. There is a presence of proline at position number 2 and glycine in position number 3, because this amino acid helps the peptide to bend. Yeah, it helps the peptide to bend. So this is type 1 beta turn, this is type 2 beta turn. You can see there is a small difference between type 1 and type 2. Yeah. So this is type 1, you can see glycine here. This is type 2. For type 1, you have proline here. This is the research that I did 15 years ago when I did my postdoctoral study at the University of Kansas in the US. Yeah. So during that time, we designed a peptide that is used as drug for autoimmune diseases. Yeah. So the drug that we designed is peptide. Yeah? It's a peptide drug. So the molecule is a peptide. So by knowing the structure of how T cells work, yeah, because basically autoimmune disease is something strongly related to how our immunity works. Yeah? So it involves T cell. Yeah? So we study how the T cell works, how the molecule in the T cell works, how the protein interacts, and we can see that the interaction happens between molecules by utilizing the turn peptide. Yeah. So the peptide, it has turn structure. Yeah. So it has turn structure. It interacts with another protein. Yeah. So we try to synthesize this peptide. Yeah. We try to synthesize this peptide. and this peptide has turn structure. Yeah. So we synthesize this peptide, and my job at the time has to stabilize the peptide. Yeah. So we use several strategy. One of the strategy is we create a cyclic peptide because we are chemists. We have to know how to stabilize the molecule. So we stabilize the molecule by creating a cyclic peptide. One way to stabilize the peptide by creating a cyclic structure is by connecting the hujung-hujung ni, yeah, we call it as N and C terminus by disulfide bond, yeah, by oxidation. So we put cysteine here. A lot of chemistry happen here. Yeah, we put cysteine here, and cysteine is amino acid with this is cysteine. COOH. It has sulfur. It has sulfur, ya. So apa yang saya buat? Saya letak cysteine dekat sini, dekat hujung ni, dan ada cysteine dekat hujung ni, ya. So it has SH, ya, dekat dua-dua hujung. And then I did oxidation. How? I just put oxygen lah overnight. Oh, so I put peptides in the solution, and then I blow with oxygen. Ya. Nama pun oxidation kan, mestilah guna oxygen kan. I oxidize overnight, and then the next day, the disulfide bond is formed. Yeah. Then the peptide becomes cyclic peptide. The cyclic peptide is more stabilized than the open peptide. This is the open peptide. It has the beta turn. Yeah. But when we put the cyclic structure here, the peptide is stabilized. Dia tak terbuka. Yeah. Dia tertutup. So we call it as cyclic peptide. And I published a paper in 2009. Yeah, 2009 about the three-dimensional structure of this cyclic peptide. Yeah. So from my story, you know that we chemists, we work closely with biologists. Yeah, my boss in the US, he did his PhD, he did his master's and PhD in organic chemistry. He is an organic chemist. Yeah? He did a lot of synthesis. But later on, when he worked in the university and he worked on his own project, he must understand biology. Yeah, because as chemist, he has to design a drug for autoimmune diseases and for cancer. Yeah, and he has to learn about immunology. So in our team we have chemists. Yeah, so our boss is chemist. I'm a chemist. We have pharmacists. Yeah, who understand how to formulate the drug, and we have cell biologists. Yeah, his name is Naoki from Japan. Is a person who worked very hard. He came to the lab early in the morning at 7, went home at 7 p.m. He worked more than 12 hours in the lab. He's Japanese. He's a hard worker. He's a very good cell biologist. But even though we come from different background, we learn from each other. I'm chemist. I learn from Naoki how to grow the cell. So I learned cell biology from him. He's a biologist, but he learned from us how to synthesize a peptide. So he has to understand chemistry as well. So that's the beauty of working in a team with a diverse background. And that's evidence that as chemists, we have to understand biology, and as biologists, they have to understand chemistry. And by understanding each other, we can come up with a good project and good results. Yeah, and yeah, because that's the nature of science now. Interconnected. Yeah, interconnected. And I show you how Moderna and Pfizer designed their vaccine. They are chemists, but they have to understand biology. Without chemists, biology cannot produce vaccine. So that's how science is interconnected. And I want you as chemistry student and later on as chemistry graduates to understand science in a more holistic way. Yeah, we cannot work in silo. We cannot just, as chemistry, I just want to do chemistry without knowing about biology and everything. You cannot discover a good thing. Yeah, without understanding other field, yeah, without involving other field in your work. Later on, when you work in a company, the same thing happen as well. You know, you are a chemistry student, but you have to understand other things as well. So yeah, I just something that you need to understand. Yeah. All right. So why proline is unique? Yeah. As I mentioned to you that you cannot have proline in alpha because proline will destroy the alpha structure. But if you have turn, you must have proline. Yeah. Proline is one of the most rigid amino acid. Yeah, this is the structure of proline. Yeah, proline is one of the most rigid amino acid because of the structure. See the structure, right? This is called trans conformation. This is called cis conformation. Yeah, you tahu kan trans and cis kan? Okay, this is trans conformation and cis conformation. Yeah, so trans conformation, yeah, can go to cis conformation only in certain condition. Yeah, in most cases, proline will stay as trans conformation. Yeah, unless you increase the temperature to a very to high temperature. Yeah, then trans will go to cis. Yeah, so unlikely. Yeah, unlikely it will go to cis conformation. So it will stay as trans conformation. Yeah? And when you look at the structure, yeah, when you look at the structure, yeah, see you can see something unique in proline. Most amino acid, dia punya structure macam ni kan, most amino acid, ya. NH2, C, and then R, and then COOH, ya. Right. And then this bond can twist kan, can twist. Tapi kalau you nampak proline, apa yang you nampak? See this? Between N and C alpha, what happened? There is this structure that does not allow proline to twist. Dia tak boleh twist. This bond cannot be twisted. Dia tak ada angle. You cannot twist them. So that's why I told you proline is the most rigid amino acid because there is no angle to twist. There is no bond to twist here between N and C. Memang tak boleh twist yang dekat sini. Right? So, and this is the amino acid used by scientists who design Moderna vaccine to stabilize the pre-fusion conformation. Dia orang letak dua proline. Kalau you bertanya-tanya how they stabilize the pre-fusion conformation, so it doesn't change into post-fusion conformation, dia orang letak dua proline. We call it as 2P. Ya, dia orang letak dua proline to stabilize the pre-fusion conformation. So those who design Moderna vaccine, they are good chemists. And I want you to be good chemists as well. So you know how to stabilize certain conformation of protein. Well, we want pre-fusion conformation. We don't want this pre-fusion to change into post-fusion. How? You know from my lecture that proline is the most rigid amino acid. Just add 2 prolines, that's it. It changed the whole story. It produced the most effective COVID vaccine at the moment because of these 2 proline. Simple. They add 2 prolines, that's it. Yeah. Amazing. Okay, that's all for today. It's almost 10. Yeah. So we continue tomorrow. All right. Okay.